My name is Julia Carter. I'm 34 years old. I have a civil engineering degree from Georgia Tech, a PE license with my name stamped on it, and 12 years of my life poured into a company my father built out of a used pickup truck and a $4,000 loan from his mother-in-law. On a Tuesday morning in November, I found out that company was no longer mine to run, not from my father, not from my mother, not in a private meeting where they'd at least have had to look me in the eye. I found out from a company-wide email, 211 employees, 43 subcontractors, and me CC'd like a vendor who needed to be kept in the loop. By the time I finished reading that email, I already knew what I was going to do. I just didn't know yet how big it would get. If you've ever given everything to something, only to watch someone else get handed the keys, stay with me. This one's for you. It was 8:47 a.m. on November 14th when my inbox pinged. Subject line, Leadership Transition, effective immediately. I remember the coffee going cold in my hand as I read it standing up, because I hadn't even made it around my desk yet. I was still in my coat. Effective today, Madison Carter will assume the role of President and CEO of Carter Construction Group. Julia Carter will continue in her current capacity. Continue in her current capacity. Like I was a crane that had been reassigned to a different job site, not the woman who had spent 12 years turning a $6 million regional outfit into a $41 million firm with a hospital wing and 3 county contracts to its name. My office phone was already ringing. Then my cell buzzed against the desk, screen lighting up with a text from a subcontractor I'd worked with for a decade. Julia, you good? Just saw the email. Then Devin from estimating knocked on my open door, his face doing that thing people's faces do right before they say something they don't want to say. Julia, did you know about this? I didn't answer him. I set my coffee down on the blueprints for the Fulton County Annex, a project I'd fought 18 months to land, sitting through 4 separate committee hearings to get it, and I walked down the hall toward my father's office, past employees who suddenly found their monitors very interesting because they already understood something I hadn't accepted yet. I told myself there had to be an explanation. I told myself my father, Andrew Carter Sr., a man who taught me to read a load-bearing wall before I could parallel park, would never blindside me like this in front of the entire company. I was wrong, and by the end of that week, I'd find out exactly how wrong. To understand what they took from me, you have to understand everything I put into it first. I was 9 years old the first time my grandmother, Odessa Reed, put a tool belt around my waist in her backyard in College Park. It was too big for me. I had to loop the strap twice around my hips, but she cinched it tight anyway and knelt down to my eye level. A woman who can build her own house, she told me, never has to beg anybody for shelter. I never forgot that. I don't think I was ever meant to. By 12, my father was teaching me to read blueprints at our kitchen table on Cascade Road, tracing his finger along load paths and footing details, while my little sister Madison, 4 years younger, sat in the next room with her Barbie dream house. Nobody forced that split onto us. I chased mine. I wanted the calluses. I wanted to understand why a beam went where it went. By 22, I had my engineering degree. By 26, I'd turned down a $95,000 offer from a firm out of Charlotte to stay at Carter Construction Group for $61,000 because my father sat across from me at that same kitchen table and said, "This is going to be yours one day, Julia. I need you here to help me build it right." I believed him. I built my entire 20s and half of my 30s around believing him. By 30, I had my PE license and I'd personally run the $18 million St. Aloysius Hospital wing, 3 weeks ahead of schedule, 0 OSHA violations, a plaque with my name on it in the lobby that I used to walk past, just to feel something. My mother, Dolores, saw all of it differently. More than once at Sunday dinner, over greens and cornbread, she'd say it plain, "Madison needs more support than you do, Julia. You've always been the strong one." I used to think that was a compliment. I was about to learn it was a warning nobody bothered to translate for me. I sat down across from my parents that same afternoon, still trying to be the reasonable one, still trying to believe this could be fixed with one honest conversation. "Dad, I need you to explain this to me," I said, keeping my voice level, even though my hands weren't. "I've run operations for 12 years. I've never missed a deadline, never gone over budget on a job I controlled. What happened?" My father wouldn't hold my eyes. He looked at the framed photo of the two of us at a groundbreaking in 2014 instead. My mother did the talking, the way she usually did when something needed saying that he didn't have the stomach for. "Terrence has a vision for where this company needs to go," she said. Terrence Boyd, Madison's fiancé, 32 years old, three-piece suits, 3 months into what he called strategic real estate positioning for the company. "Family businesses need unity, Julia. Madison and Terrence, together, that's the future of this firm." "I offered to co-lead with Madison back in the spring," I reminded them. "You both said no, that I wasn't ready to share it. Now you're telling me she's CEO and I'm, what, exactly? Still just staff?" My father finally looked up at me. "It's already done, Julia. The paperwork's filed." And that's when my mother said the thing I will carry with me for the rest of my life. "You don't have a husband or kids depending on this, Julia. Madison has a future to build." I sat there a second too long, doing the math in my head on 12 years of birthdays and holidays I'd missed for poor dates and inspection deadlines, being told, essentially, that my life mattered less because it hadn't come with a ring attached to it. I didn't scream, I didn't slam a door. I said, "Okay," and I stood up, and I walked back to my office and closed the door quietly, because I was still, God help me, trying to be reasonable. I gave it 1 week. November 21st, 1 week later, I badged in at 7:15 a.m. like I had for 12 years straight, coffee in one hand, laptop bag on my shoulder. The reader blinked red. I tried again, thinking it was a glitch. Red. That's when Terrence Boyd walked up from the parking lot, flanked by a security guard I'd never once seen on our site, and said, loud enough for the 2 subcontractors unloading rebar behind him to hear every word, "Julia, your role's being restructured effective today. I'll need the company vehicle keys and your phone." 40 feet away, Earl Thompson, 61 years old, our lead foreman since before I was born, a man who used to sneak me extra donuts off the job site truck, stood frozen with a coffee cup halfway to his mouth, watching a man who'd been part of this family for 3 months strip a badge off a woman who'd poured half the concrete under his boots. I handed over the keys. My hand didn't shake. I made sure of that. "I poured the foundation under your feet, Terrence," I said, quiet enough that only he and the guard could hear it. "You're firing me from a doorway I built." He didn't have a response for that. He just held his hand out for the phone. That was the moment. Not loud, not dramatic, no scene for the parking lot to gossip about for weeks. Just final. I stopped being reasonable that morning, not because I lost my temper, but because I finally understood that I would never again get anything in that building by asking politely for the respect I'd already earned in concrete and steel. They let me back inside with an escort, like I was suddenly a liability, instead of the person who'd once talked an entire crew back onto a roof during a record heat wave because they trusted my read on the weather more than the forecast. Yolanda Price, my estimator and closest friend inside those walls, helped me box up 12 years in under 40 minutes. Diplomas, photos from the hospital wing ribbon cutting, a chipped coffee mug that said, "World's okayest boss," that Devon had gotten me as a joke 2 Christmases back. Yolanda didn't say much while we packed. She didn't have to. When we hit the parking lot with the last box, she looked at me and said, "Give me 2 weeks. I'm not staying here." Earl caught me by my car before I could pull out. He didn't say a word about Terrence, or my parents, or the company. He just reached into his jacket and pressed something cold and heavy into my palm. His own grandfather's brass level, the one he'd kept on his belt for 40 years, worn smooth at the edges from decades of hands. "You'll build something true," he said. "You always have." Even when nobody was watching close enough to notice. I sat in that parking lot for exactly 4 minutes before I could make myself turn the key. I didn't cry. I made a list on the back of a job site invoice instead. Every contact, every relationship, every subcontractor who'd ever trusted my word over a handshake. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at a table I built with my own 2 hands. I was going to build one twice its size. 6 weeks. That's how long my savings would carry me before panic became the rational response instead of a warning sign. So instead of panicking, I made calls. I met Malik Reeves at an industry mixer downtown, introduced by a subcontractor who owed me a favor from the hospital job. Malik ran acquisitions at Ironclad Capital Partners, a mid-market private equity firm with a documented soft spot for founders who'd been underestimated by somebody who should have known better. I pitched him standing at a cash bar with a napkin sketch of a 5-year pipeline and a voice that only cracked once. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday afternoon in a glass conference room, Ironclad committed $2.3 million in seed capital, wired in 3 tranches tied to milestones I fully intended to blow past. I named the company after the woman who'd started all of this in a backyard in College Park, Reed Standard Construction, in honor of my grandmother, Odessa Reed. Yolanda kept her word and walked in exactly 14 days after me, resignation letter already filed. We rented 900 square feet above a dry cleaner on that same stretch of Cascade Road, 3 folding tables from a wholesale club, 1 landline, and a hand-lettered sign taped in the window because the vinyl one hadn't come in yet. It wasn't a corner office with my name etched in brass. It was mine, every square foot of it, and nobody could email it away from me overnight. 8 months in, Reed Standard was bidding against my old company for a mixed-use development out in East Point, and losing, repeatedly, because Carter Construction Group kept undercutting the field by margins that didn't add up on paper. Then I started hearing things at the supply yards, the places where the real news of this industry actually travels. A subcontractor I'd known for a decade, unpaid going on 60 days, cornered me by the rebar racks. "Y'all heard anything out of Carter? Terrence keeps pushing our checks, says it's a processing delay." "Ain't no processing delay take 2 months. Earl called me one night, still loyal to my father even after everything, his voice low and tired in a way I'd never heard from him. "Money's going somewhere it shouldn't, Julia. I don't have proof. I just know the numbers don't sit right, and nobody up top wants to hear it from an old foreman." I sat with that for 3 days straight. Part of me wanted to walk back into my father's office and lay every piece of it on his desk. Part of me remembered standing in a parking lot with a security guard at my elbow, handing over keys to a building I'd bled for. I decided I wasn't going to save them. I also wasn't going to sabotage them. I was just going to keep building and let whatever was already in motion finish moving on its own. It broke wide open in February. The Atlanta Business Chronicle ran a headline that stopped me cold in a supplier's parking lot, phone screen glowing in the cold air. "Fraud allegations rock Carter Construction Group." A subcontractor's lawsuit had cracked it open first, then the county auditors, then a forensic accountant hired by one of the lenders. Terrence Boyd had funneled $6.4 million through a shell real estate LLC registered quietly in his own name over 11 months. Fulton County pulled its contract within the week. 2 lenders called their loans due in full, in writing, with 30-day deadlines. Madison, thrust into a CEO chair she'd never been trained to sit in, was left holding paperwork for a fraud she hadn't authorized and hadn't seen coming, next to a fiancé who'd stopped returning her calls by the 2nd week. The engagement was over before the trees came back in March. Carter Construction Group defaulted that April. The bank moved to force a sale of everything, every piece of equipment, every land holding, every open contract, even the building itself on Cascade Road, packaged into a single portfolio and put in front of qualified buyers. Meanwhile, Reed Standard Construction had grown into a $340 million operation stretched across 3 states, backed now by a second, far larger round from Ironclad. When that portfolio hit the market that spring, my name was already sitting on the short list of buyers who could close. I hadn't gone looking for this. I just never stopped building, and the ground had finally shifted under the people who'd stopped believing there was anything worth building under me. The sale closed in a downtown conference room in June, the same kind of room I used to sit in as a junior project manager, taking notes nobody bothered to read back to me. My legal team submitted the winning bid, full portfolio, every employee retained, effective immediately upon signing. Reed Standard Construction, valued north of $1 billion following our latest funding round, became the new owner of Carter Construction Group in its entirety, down to the parking lot, where a security guard once took my car keys. I walked into that boardroom myself for the closing. My father's face moved through 3 separate expressions before it finally landed on something like stillness. My mother's hand actually shook around her coffee cup, rattling the saucer underneath it. Madison was there too, 29 years old, sitting small in a chair that used to have my name plaque on the door behind it. "Julia," my father finally said, voice barely above the hum of the air conditioning, "you did this?" "I built this," I said. "There's a difference. You're welcome to sit with that." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. 12 years of being told I was the strong one who didn't need support had built something steady in me that no longer required their apology to feel whole. It only required the truth to finally be sitting in plain sight, on paper, with my signature at the bottom of it. Earl retired that summer with a full pension and a standing invitation to walk any Reed Standard job site he wants, whenever he wants, no badge required. He still shows up most Fridays with a thermos of coffee and opinions about rebar spacing nobody asked for and everybody listens to anyway. I offered Madison a position, not handed to her, offered, as a project coordinator, starting exactly where everyone in this business starts, on site, in steel-toe boots, learning the load-bearing math nobody ever gave her the real chance to learn the first time around. She took it. She's still there 10 months later. She's good at it, actually, now that nobody's clearing the path in front of her before she gets a chance to walk it herself. My parents and I talk now, carefully, on Sundays sometimes, the way you talk to people you love but no longer fully trust with anything that matters to you. I've made peace with both of those things being true in the same breath. My grandmother's tool belt hangs on the wall of my office now, next to Earl's brass level under a small brass plate that just says Reed Standard. It's the same building on Cascade Road, the same badge readers by the front door, except the sign out front says something different now, and my key works every single morning without hesitation. People ask me sometimes if I regret how any of it happened. The email, the parking lot, the locks. I don't. They didn't hand me a legacy when I was owed one, so I went and built my own, and it turned out to be bigger than the one they were ever trying to protect from me in the first place. The story may be over, but the conversation doesn't have to be. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more incredible stories, and tell me in the comments what ending you imagined. Thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time.